Hello, I'm Sean, and welcome to a special episode of the Sengoku Archives YouTube channel. We have reached 100 subscribers. I am so thankful for every single one of you, for the channel would be nothing without you all. To say thanks, I have a special episode for you. If you haven't guessed from my videos and social media posts, I'm a huge fan of Samurai Warriors and Sengoku Basara. It was actually my introduction to the Sengoku Jidai, and I slowly moved away from the video games and focused more on its history. Yet, I never forgot what sparked my love for this era of Japanese history. Now, 16 years later, I look back on this game with nostalgia, because it is still the best game in the franchise. In this special episode, we are going to review Samurai Warriors 2. For those who never got the chance to play this game, Samurai Warriors 2, which is also known as Sengoku Musu 2, came to PlayStation 2s and Xbox 360s in 2006, following closely on the heels of the first game, which only came out 2 years prior. The game was similar to the Dynasty Warriors franchise, which was produced by the same company, with the exception that Samurai Warriors focused on the famous figures of the Sengoku Jidai, while Dynasty Warriors was the Three Kingdoms era of China in a hack-and-slash semi-fantasy video game. Samurai Warriors 2 was very similar to its Chinese counterpart, Dynasty Warriors 5, which came out around the same time. In this game, each character, with the exceptions of Okuni and Mori Ranmaru, had their own story modes, allowing for the player to dive into their individual stories. It also had a brighter color palette than the first game in the series, which brought about a certain beauty to the game. Samurai Warriors 2 extends well beyond the years of the first game, which only focused on the age of Oda Nobunaga, much like what Samurai Warriors 5 has done. This is apparent from its character roster, many who were people who lived during the age of Nobunaga, with few exceptions, like Sanada Yukimura and Date Masamune. Samurai Warriors 2 goes beyond Nobunaga and includes Toyotomi Hideyoshi's rule, followed by the Battle of Saikagahara. This also means we get a larger character roster. The characters that were originally introduced to us in the first installment of Samurai Warriors and who were brought back for the second game are Sanada Yukimura, Maeda Keiji, Oda Nobunaga, Akechi Mitsuhide, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Honda Tadakatsu, Saika Magoichi, Date Masamune, Hattori Hanzo, Usuki Kenshin, Takeda Shingen, No, Oichi, Ina, Okuni, and Mori Ranmaru. Samurai Warriors 2 introduces us to Tokugawa Ieyasu, Azai Nagamasa, Miyamoto Musashi, Shimazu Yoshihiro, Fuma Kotaro, Naoe Kanetsugu, Shima Sakon, Ishida Mitsunari, Tachibana Ginshio, and Nene. We are also treated to two non-playable characters, Shibata Katsue and Sasaki Gojiro. While the characters of Imagawa Yoshimoto, Ishikawa Goemon, and Kunoichi were removed from this installment, the creators made up for their removal by bringing in many new playable characters, some which were important during the Saikagahara campaign. It is not the gameplay or even the characters per se that make me nostalgic for this game, but rather the stories. In recent years, it seems that the Samurai Warriors franchise has moved in a different direction. The stories are following closer to history, and are moving away from the storylines that focus solely on the character you've chosen to play as. Games that have really followed this path are Samurai Warriors Spirit of Sanada, released in 2016, and Samurai Warriors 5, released in 2021. While I have not gotten a chance to play the newest game in full, I have played Spirit of Sanada. I like how they aged the characters, the side missions, and the castle settings, yet it felt like something was lacking to me. I missed the fantastical storylines that were created for the game. What drew me to Samurai Warriors 2 was not just the gameplay and the stages, but how I got to know the characters through their individual stories. The original stories, whether or not they were close to history or not, is what kept me coming back. For this video, I thought we'd dive into 4 of my absolute favorite stories. The first one is a 2-for-1. For these two storylines overlap one another to create one story. They're the storylines for Akechi Mitsuhide and Saika Magoichi. For those who might not know, Akechi Mitsuhide was a samurai who served under Oda Nobunaga and would eventually betray him at Honnoji in Kyoto. Saika Magoichi is a bit of a mystery, as this name has been linked to at least 3 different people who lived 3 completely different lives. We will definitely cover him in a future episode, but just know that this version of Magoichi is more fictional than most other characters in the game because of the lack of records we have on him. Starting with Mitsuhide's storyline, we find him walking in the rain when the Oda forces rush past him. It is obvious that he admires Nobunaga, beginning to believe that the nickname of the Fool of Owari is only said by people who do not fully understand Nobunaga. Mitsuhide joins him, and the first battle of the story is at the retreat from Kanagasaki. This retreat comes after the Oda's attack on the Asakura clan fails, when the Azai, led by Nobunaga's brother-in-law, Azai Nagamasa, betrays him and attacks the Oda, forcing them to fall back. Mitsuhide begins to question his loyalty to Nobunaga when his lord launches yet another attack against Nagamasa at the siege of Odani Castle, believing that Nobunaga is being extremely ruthless. Nagamasa ends up surrendering, and Mitsuhide brings him back to the Oda main camp. Nagamasa takes Mitsuhide's katana from his side and steps towards Nobunaga, acting like he's going to kill him. However, Nagamasa kills himself by slitting his own throat. Nobunaga's rampage continues, and Mitsuhide follows his lord to the attack of the Saika village. Mitsuhide is appalled at the destruction and loss of human life, but he does begin to realize that he can put an end to the chaos in Japan by defeating Nobunaga himself. He leads an army to attack Nobunaga at Honnoji, but when it comes to dealing the final blow, Mitsuhide can't do it. He realizes that he doesn't want control of the land, but to see the land as only Nobunaga can create it. When it seems like everything is going to be okay, Nobunaga is killed by Saika Magoichi, who snipes him from a nearby rooftop. Now, Saika Magoichi's story up until this point has been pretty eventful. We are introduced to Magoichi when Toyotomi Hideyoshi, an old friend, hires the mercenary to help him and the Oda clan with their fight against Azai Nagamasa at the Battle of Anegawa. Once he completes his mission there, he goes back home, but is dragged back into the conflict, this time fighting alongside the defenders of Ishiyama Honganji, who are fighting against the Oda. Because he answered their call to arms, Magoichi became Nobunaga's next target. The Saika village was destroyed. Hideyoshi came to Magoichi to explain what happened and to apologize, but Magoichi turns on Hideyoshi, no longer wanting to hear what his old friend has to say. Magoichi manages to escape, but he swears that he will kill Nobunaga for what he has done. He goes to Honnoji and gets Nobunaga in his sights. After he fires the shot that would kill Nobunaga, Nobunaga says something to Magoichi that makes him panic. What do you desire? Magoichi believes he has gotten what he desires by killing Nobunaga, but now that Nobunaga is dead, he is not too sure what he's supposed to do now, nor what anyone is supposed to do for that matter. Mitsuhide finds Magoichi's location and sends his men after him. Magoichi tries to escape, but at some point he loses consciousness at the feet of Hideyoshi. Magoichi wakes up in a hut and finds Hideyoshi sitting next to a fire. Turns out, Hideyoshi saved Magoichi from the pursuing army. Hideyoshi asks for Magoichi's help in the fight against Mitsuhide and take control of the land. Magoichi snaps at Hideyoshi, saying that he should want to kill him instead, because it was him, not Mitsuhide, who killed Nobunaga. Hideyoshi points out that killing Magoichi won't change the world, nor will it bring Nobunaga back. Hideyoshi also states that he would end up losing 2 friends instead of 1. Hideyoshi finally convinces Magoichi to join him in the fight against Mitsuhide, and it's on to Yamazaki. This is where their storylines change to fit the characters. Mitsuhide's story mode ends with him being victorious at the Battle of Yamazaki, bringing an end to the wars. He talks to himself in his castle, stating that this is the land he wanted to create, and that the only thing that was missing was Nobunaga. He feels a presence, which happens to be Nobunaga's spirit standing behind him. Mitsuhide turns to face him, but the spirit vanishes. Nobunaga's last words to Mitsuhide echo throughout the room, leaving him on the verge of tears. Saika Magoichi's story ends more tragically. He fights at Yamazaki, but becomes mortally wounded towards the end of the battle. He manages to return to the main camp, and he begins to realize that he's at death's door. Hideyoshi becomes distraught as he realizes that his friend is about to die in his arms. He promises to create a world where everyone can be happy, but he just wants Magoichi to live to see the land that he creates. Sadly, Magoichi dies in Hideyoshi's arms, and Hideyoshi cries for the loss of his friend. Don't worry though, Magoichi lives on in another storyline, to which he becomes the ally to Date Masamune. Naoe Kanetsugu is another character that has an interesting storyline, and he is one of my favorite characters in the game. Western audiences will not know much about him, but Naoe Kanetsugu served under both Uesugi Kenshin and Uesugi Kagekatsu, and was known for keeping the Uesugi clan together after the Sekigahara campaign. His story is not his own until we get past the stages of Kawanakajima and Todorigawa. We see Kanetsugu stand out more when we reach the siege of Odawara Castle, and Dynasty Warriors fans are treated to an interesting cutscene. Ishida Mitsunari is talking to Kanetsugu about how the Toyotomi will soon win the war due to people surrendering like Date Masamune did, or they'll be crushed by their superior numbers. Kanetsugu tries to change Mitsunari's thinking, explaining that there is more to winning than just numbers. Interestingly, Kanetsugu writes the Ishida claymon on the ground with his sword and translates it. One for all and all for one, and may heaven bless the land. Kanetsugu explains that if they follow this policy, the land will prosper. Kanetsugu asks Mitsunari to swear an oath of honor with him, and he, along with Sanoda Yukimura, who happens to be nearby and overhears their conversation and joins them, swear an oath of honor together. For anyone who has played the Dynasty Warriors franchise, this scene looks oddly familiar. In both the video game and the opening chapter of The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhong Fei all meet and then swear an oath of brotherhood, which would later be known as the Peach Garden Oath. Fast forward to 1600. Naoe Kanetsugu learns that Mitsunari was defeated at Saikagahara, but his whereabouts are unknown. He hopes that Mitsunari is still alive, but he has to help his men escape from the Date army that is closing in on them. Maeda Keiji helps Kanetsugu with their retreat from Hasedo, and once they are safe, they receive more news from Saikagahara. Mitsunari was executed. While the Asugi men are celebrating their escape from the Date, Kanetsugu wanders off, and Keiji becomes suspicious. Keiji finds Kanetsugu about to commit seppuku, and literally knocks some sense into him. Keiji points out that yes, Mitsunari is dead, but he did refuse his last meal, because he didn't want to take any favors from the enemy. Keiji also reminds Kanetsugu that Mitsunari never broke his promise to him. Regaining his sense of purpose, Kanetsugu joins Keiji and Yukimura to attack the Tokugawa at Edo Castle. They are victorious, and they celebrate their victory in honor of their fallen friend. Lastly, I want to focus on the story of Azai Nagamasa. Here's a character that if the creators had followed history, would have only appeared for a couple of battles, especially since the focus of the game has moved past the age of Nobunaga. Historically, he was the husband to Oichi, who was Nobunaga's sister, but he would betray the Oda in the end and would die at the siege of Odani Castle in 1573. But they created an interesting and well-executed storyline for Nagamasa in Samurai Warriors 2, and it is done in Twilight Zone fashion. Azai Nagamasa's story begins being historically accurate. He portrays his brother-in-law, Oda Nobunaga, managing to push him back at Kanagasaki. While they win the day, he has to go home and face his wife, Oichi, and apologize for going against her family. Oichi understands, but Nagamasa feels like he's betrayed her somehow. Nagamasa faces off against Nobunaga again, this time at the Battle of Anegawa, and by twisting history a bit, the Azai end up winning again. This defeat allows for the other regional lords to rebel against Nobunaga, and the clash happens at Mount Usa. From what I can gather, this seems to be the name they give for Mount Hiei for this game, but this is going off the events in the battle and the makeup of the armies. Nagamasa is ordered by his Asakura ally to kill Nobunaga if he were to come across him, but Nagamasa fails to do so. Nobunaga even taunts him for his inability to kill him. Nagamasa does not wish to kill Nobunaga, but he understands what might happen if he does not. Nagamasa does not falter when he faces Nobunaga for a fourth and final time at Odani Castle, but the victory is hollow for Nagamasa. He feels like he has lost honor for killing his brother-in-law, and love for going against Oichi's family. Nagamasa does not have time to rest, for Tokugawa Ieyasu gathers a coalition to challenge him for Nobunaga's lands at Shizukatake. Before the battle begins, Nagamasa explains to Oichi how he's been feeling as of late, and that he would not blame her if she were to leave him. The only thing that he asked was for her to leave while his back was turned, so that he would not have to watch her go. Once he turns around, Oichi is gone, and it seems that she has left him. But Oichi returns with a wisteria flower in her hands and explains that he has never lost love nor honor. With a renewed sense of purpose, Nagamasa goes on to defeat Ieyasu's army and take over the land to realize Nobunaga's dream, the only way he can honor his brother-in-law. Nagamasa has now unified Japan, and he falls asleep in the middle of a council, only to wake back up at Kanagasaki. He realizes that everything he just experienced was a dream. With a clear image of what the future could hold for him, he marches on to defeat Nobunaga, knowing that he will still be able to uphold both love and honor. Samurai Warriors 2, to me, will always be the greatest video game in the entire franchise, mainly because it does not follow history. While I do like how they went about Spirit of Sanada and the new Samurai Warriors 5, I feel like these games are lacking something. The stories in this game allow for the player to get to know the characters on a deeper level. To me, it feels like the characters have more personality when they're given a more fictionalized version of themselves rather than following history. Again, this is just my opinion, and I'm not saying that the other games are bad. I've played every single installment in the franchise, and while they are good, something always keeps me coming back to Samurai Warriors 2, and I think that speaks volumes of the type of game it is. This game is almost 20 years old at the time of this episode, and it holds up extremely well. It's a definite nostalgia trip, and if you haven't played it, I recommend you find a way to do so. For me, Samurai Warriors 2 will always have a special place in my heart, because had it not been for this game, I would not be sitting here talking to you all about it today. To the game that brought me here, and brought me so much joy, thanks for the memories. That's all for now. Thank you all so much for getting us to 100 subscribers. This episode was made special for you all for helping the channel reach this milestone. Expect another special episode once we reach 200 subscribers. Please share this channel with people you think would like the content, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Thank you all again, and until next time, take care.